Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Harrogate series. Harrogate is a large borough, one of the 11 districts of North Yorkshire. It's got 139 civil parishes. Which one are we in this episode? Welcome back to Harrogate again, people. And in this episode, there's a high chance you might recognise some places that we've already been. And the reason for that is because it borders some places we've already been. And the border, if you look across the borderline, you can see some of the features which we've already covered. This is a bit of a weird one because the main village isn't actually the main walk. The main walk is around what's effectively a brand new housing estate, and the village is a really tiny sort of add-on, if you like, to it these days. This is the parish of Milby. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Milby, Mildy's farm. Hello again, Harrogatonians. Here's another village in your part of Yorkshire. This week we're back in the vicinity of Boroughbridge. In fact, this place borders that town. A few months ago now, we had a look at Langthorpe, and you may recall in that one we met a weir on the River Ure, close to a pub called the Grantham Arms. Langthorpe covers everything to the western side of Leeming Lane, north of the river. This time we're exploring the eastern side. This is the parish of Milby. Most of the people who live in Milby are residents of a brand new housing estate built on the eastern side of Leeming Lane. Effectively, it's part of Langthorpe in all but name, because Milby village is half a mile away along the riverbank. Because it's all new, landmarks here are sparse. There's no church, no school, and not many facilities, but as we already know, Langthorpe provides the area with most of those. Until the 1960s, a railway line ran through the area now covered by the estate. If you know where to look, parts of the former railway infrastructure can still be seen, and the station house still stands too. In Milby village, we'll be covering another lock and the history behind the Milby Cut, an artificial waterway that allowed navigation on the River Ure. It's a fun one this, varied and unique. Let's go. We begin our main walk in the rain on Wren Drive. This is one of the many new streets that have sprung up in recent years within the parish of Milby. These are so new that in places the builders are still building them. Not all of them are yet marked on maps either. An estate typical of the 21st century, this one comes with all the bits and bobs we're used to in such an area. There's a couple of these playgrounds, for example. Everything on this eastern side of Boroughbridge Road is the work of Miller Homes. Before these existed, this was just a farmer's field backing onto an industrial estate. Now, with the addition of these new homes, Milby's population has soared. Ironically though, most people who live here consider themselves residents of Boroughbridge or Langthorpe and not Milby. Even though most of this area looks exactly the same, there are in fact several separate chunks of new development. By crossing Boroughbridge Road, we're off into another part. It's known as Hockley Croft, and these properties are the work of Harron Homes. Part of this estate is still under construction. One thing remains the same, however: the weather. I guess you can't have it all. It's very easy to get lost on one of these brand new housing estates because all the houses look the same, don't they? And you just can't distinguish between one street and another, generally speaking anyway. But this is why I plan a route, because I know where I'm going. And we continue on the other side of the road now, and through the housing estate. We're going to head towards the site of an old station, which we kind of briefly mentioned in the Langthorpe episode quite a while ago now. Even with all these new builds, public rights of way still must remain open. We're on one here, which skirts the edge of the estate. Off to the right is a second, and if you follow that one, you can reach a village we already know, Kirby Hill. Here it can be seen in the distance across this field. Staying within the estate though, we pass through another playground next before Hockley Crescent comes into view. This is one area where the new homes are still being built. As ever with new build estates these days, there's a balancing lagoon nearby, designed to cope with any potential flooding. Now at this point you'll note there's an elevated section overlooking Brewery Mews. Until 1964 that was the route of the Pillmore, Boroughbridge and Knaresborough Railway. Commonly it was referred to as the Boroughbridge branch line. This, the first section, terminated at Boroughbridge after leaving the East Coast Main Line at Pillmore. Several brick abutments marked the position of the former railway. The line had a station named Boroughbridge, even though the town itself is on the other side of the Ure. It's Market Hill next via a footpath around the side of the Grantham Arms. Directly south of here is the roundabout where the Milby cut passes under the route of the Great North Road. We know that route today as Boroughbridge Road, which heads north to Dishforth and then on to Northallerton. That's Grantham House in front of us here. Both that and the pub are named for Lord Grantham of Newby Hall. Now we come to the Coronation Hall. This is the only communal venue for most of the villages north of the Ure. Residents of Milby, Langthorpe and Kirby Hill all use it, and so too do those from Boroughbridge. That makes this an ideal place for a TVI card. This industrial area was the site of the railway's goods yard. The station building, Grade 2 listed, still stands. It's now part of a business called Boroughbridge Brick and Tile. Next to it is a modern warehouse owned by Russells, agricultural machinery suppliers, likely known to many a local farmer. Yards away from that on Boroughbridge Road you can see another brick abutment where the railway would have once been. It must have been so different around here when the line was active, a far cry from all this brand new housing and the modernity of life here these days. Okay, we've completed the circuit of this brand new housing estate, but we've seen some old stuff as well, haven't we? The old railway line and a few old cottages and things, but nothing really of any massive importance, not from a modern standpoint anyway. So we've been all the way around that, and we still haven't seen the actual village that this parish is named after, have we? Well, Milby is really, really small, and it's about a half a mile to the east from here. Let's go check it out. So this is Milby village, and honestly if you blink you'll miss it. In terms of residences, it's not much more than just a handful of farmhouses at a crossroads. Having said that, Milby is much more important for its history and its modern business. If you take a left turn at the central crossroads, you're on Church Lane. Milby has no church. It's referring instead to All Saints Church at Kirby Hill, which you can only reach on foot these days from here. Drive up here though and you'll meet Devonish. Devonish are an animal feed company founded in 1952 in Belfast. This factory is part of their A1 team, which also has premises in Denmark. They produce food for pigs and game birds primarily. Their other team, known as Yemvit, is based in Turkey and manufactures feeds for animals such as cows and sheep, and poultry and fish. Now to head across the crossroads onto Tinker Lane as we make for the river. This area was well known to the Romans. On the other side of the Ure at Milby is Aldborough and the site of the Roman fort known as Isurium Brigantium. Deer Street, a Roman road which led to Aldborough, crossed the River Ure at Milby. Until the mid-19th century, the remains of an old wooden bridge carrying the road as it spanned the river could still be seen. Deer Street also crossed the route of the Great North Road close to here too. Of course, none of this can be seen, but we can get a look at Milby Lock, and that is our last job. Okay, so Milby's biggest landmark, apart from the farm I've just shown you, is Milby Lock, which we have mentioned before. We mentioned it back at Westwick Lock, if you remember that episode from a long time ago. So at the very far end of the lane I've just driven down, there's a bridleway. I think it's a bridleway, it might be a footpath, I'm not totally sure, but it leads to the River Ure and the Milby Cut, and of course Milby Lock. Let's go and see them. So this is Milby Lock, just to the south of the village itself. It's possible to walk to this from Langthorpe if you follow a footpath from the roundabout near the weir. The weir is the reason why this lock exists. Milby Lock stands at the eastern end of the Milby Cut, an 850 metre long canalised section of the River Ure that was created in order to allow waterborne traffic to avoid the otherwise impassable weir. Both the lock and the cut were constructed in 1769. Westwick Lock was also built at that time after an Act of Parliament was passed making the Ure navigable as far north as Ripon. The waterway was planned in 1766 and was designed by John Smeaton, who also masterminded the Ripon Canal. The Milby Cut is considered to be part of that canal, despite the fact the official start point is much further west. The building of the Milby Cut led to the construction of one of the first cast iron bridges in the country, which had the important job of carrying the Great North Road into Boroughbridge. Nowadays, that bridge is the one that carries the roundabout, where the B6265 meets Boroughbridge Road. Milby Lock is a fabulous little spot to visit these days, but do be mindful, parking-wise. Okay, that is a wrap for Milby. I will just say one thing: if you want to walk down to the lock and need to park your car anywhere in Milby, it's a very difficult thing to do. I had to be a bit creative of with where I left the car, but hopefully I haven't annoyed anybody. But yeah, that's the parish of Milby, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. Let's move on to the next one, and if you think Milby's small, wait until you see what I've got for you lined up next. To say that Milby is a parish covered mainly by a dull and somewhat monochromatic new housing estate, it still had a lot to talk about. However, our luck is about to run out. Next week, we'll be in a place that has barely anything at all. Join me for a very short drive into a dead end, deep in the countryside. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.